We continue now diving into the reaction from folks across the nation this evening. We have Caroline Hupp, who is joining us. Caroline, thank you so much for your time. We understand you're the vice president of the College Republicans at App State University in Boone. So thank you so much for your time here. And tell us your thoughts tonight. How are you feeling? How are you reacting? What are you hearing from your fellow members of the College Republicans?
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it was a shock. Half of us were in class, the other were on campus. We actually typically meet Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday, and this was one of the nights that we have our meetings. So we also have a Turning Point chapter on campus as well. So seeing the different reactions both from the College Republicans and Turning Point was just a shock. I mean, I was coming back from a hike, and I mean, I see all these messages and it's like Charlie Kirk's been shot, and someone found the uncensored video, and like people, like, it was just like our hearts stopped, and half of us just feel sick from just this tragedy that has happened. And the other half are wanting to uphold Charlie Kirk's legacy. And one of our members noted at our meeting that this is the most social media presidents that we have had to be united as conservatives. And it's something nice to see, but to come in such a bad way.
Now, I mean, we've heard. We've heard this evening the Utah Governor Spencer Cox essentially calling this a political assassination. Your thoughts tonight on where we stand as a nation, political violence, the rhetoric that we're seeing right now. How are you feeling as a young person, seeing what's happening, watching these headlines, seeing what transpired today?
I personally feel that it's very disheartening to see that we are conservatives and liberals are being attacked for the views. It again, very disheartening to see that people choose the route of violence when one person has doesn't agree with you. And I think that there are many other ways outside of violence that we can solve these problems. And at the end of the day, it is the narrative from media, from social media to news outlets, that it was what makes these types of events hurt, because there's just so much different information going around. People don't know what is right, what's wrong. And so I think part of what happened with Charlie Kirk was like, people were like, oh, he's been shot. People saying that he's dead. People saying that he's in stable conditions. Like, what is it, you know? So seeing this, it really hurts, and our prayers are to Charlie Kirk and his family, and to all conservatives across the nation. I know that he was, at least for Gen Z, he was our advocate for our beliefs and our views, and he's someone that we felt like touched us in so many ways. And it's just sad to see that his life is now sadly at peace in heaven.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to talk more about, his impact on you. Clearly, he spoke to you. We know he's a polarizing figure, whether you agree or disagree with him. I mean, he was there and he was voicing his opinion. So I guess talk about, how he spoke to you and why he was such a key figure in your life politically, and why it sounds like you looked up to him. So why? And explain that for folks watching here.
I remember seeing videos in high school just of Charlie Kirk when he started out, and I'm like, oh, that's like a really interesting person. I think the thing that popped at first was because of how vocal he is and was about his views, and being able to see that he can defend himself even against the masses. Felt really encouraging to me, and I know, as well as a bunch of other members in our club and organization, feel similarly. What I liked the most about him was how he was able to bring both politics and religion together within the conservative group. A lot of people don't like that, but as a Catholic, I feel like the way he not brought about, but presented his views really took place in my heart. And just seeing him within the past 2 years, I mean, go from where he was to where he is now. Was he was president of Turning Point, but I feel like he has really just stepped up with not just Turning Point, but all conservatives across the United States. And so that's just one of the many things that struck at my heart with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, and I guess what of his views spoke to you the most? What do you feel like, he understood about you and what you care about as a conservative American that really spoke to you?
More specifically, the solutions that he provided, if it was like between same-sex marriage or gun rights, gun control. It just honestly, all of it really just stuck out to me the most. But I mean, he was just someone that I very much liked, and proud to like be in the same party as him and have him advocate for my generation. And the hope was, future generations as well. But as you know.
Well, Caroline, I know this is pretty early on and probably still trying to process this news. I'm kind of curious how you and your fellow college Republicans plan to go forward, given what happened. Are there, any plans to honor him in certain ways? Or what can you, I guess, tell us about that aspect going forward?
So we met tonight. We really the officers were considering, like, should we still have our meeting? And we all unanimously agreed that we still needed to have our meeting. We decided to pivot from what we originally planned to do. And so instead, we decided to talk about the stabbing in Charlotte, because that did happen between our last meeting and this meeting, as well as the news with Charlie Kirk. It was still very fresh, so still trying to figure out what's happening. And we typically have people come in prior to our meeting just to be there early. And we had members from Turning Point coming in as well, just because they just felt lost, and they wanted to connect with those with similar values. So they came in, and we all just kind of talked about his legacy, what he meant to us. We had the news on in the background. We did watch the press release from the Utah, I believe it was the police department and the governor. But tomorrow night we planned for a 9/11 memorial, and we will be including a memorial for Charlie Kirk. Turning Point has a memorial for 9/11 on Sanford Mall early in the day, but I believe we are going to go to each other's events as well. And I do briefly know that Turning Point was supposed to have their inaugural meeting tomorrow, but that was canceled. It came from higher up in the nation, just pausing all events Turning Point related for the next week, just because of how shaken everyone is. And I was reading in the chat earlier, a lot of them got out of class about 4 o'clock time frame, and they all met at the library and just prayed for a few minutes. And we did that again at the meeting, both opening and closing. And we will do it again tomorrow night when we both honor both those that were lost their lives at 9/11 and Charlie Kirk. So that's what we plan to do, at least in the near future. It's still very fresh, but we know that Charlie Kirk would still want us to push on and continue his legacy in pushing conservative Christian values.
Caroline Hupp, thank you so much for your time and for joining us to give us your insights and your reactions tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, folks, we actually want to turn to some breaking developments on the investigation front. Just moments ago, FBI Director Kash Patel has posted on X that the suspect, or the subject rather, who is in custody, the one we've been referring to all evening, the person of interest, has been released after law enforcement interrogated them. So he goes on to say, as you can see, the investigation continues. He says, we will continue to release information in interest of transparency. So the situation as we understand it at this point, there is no longer a person of interest in custody. They were questioned by authorities. And there is a separate person who was, we understand, charged with obstruction charges. That's the person we see in a lot of the videos that are going viral, who we see being arrested and detained. That is a different person who authorities have said is not related to the shooting, but separately has been booked for obstruction. George Zinn was that person's name. This person in custody, however, who at one point this evening, a senior official had told NBC News they thought with pretty high confidence this person was the shooter, apparently has now been released. So where the investigation goes from here, we're unsure, but we do know that FBI has actually set up a digital tip line for folks to share any information, videos, photos, whatever they might know. That tip line can be found at the FBI Salt Lake City social media pages. But essentially, it's tips.fbi.gov, and there's more to the web address, but tips.fbi.gov. And I know that authorities will continue to want to call for information, especially given the developments of this person of interest now being released. All right, folks, a lot to catch up on here when we get back from this quick break. 2 minutes. We'll be back here with Live Impact News. We appreciate you sticking with us here as we continue our coverage throughout the evening. All right, folks, thanks so much for staying with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We continue our coverage of the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. As we mentioned before, Utah governor has characterized this as a political assassination. And in just the last several moments, we learned from FBI Director Kash Patel that the person of interest that they had in custody this evening has apparently been released after being interrogated by authorities. So the investigation does continue here. We mentioned there's a digital tip line for folks that the FBI has put out to share information, videos, images, anything they might know about the shooting or the potential shooter here. So you can find more information on X and various social media platforms, as that is on the FBI Salt Lake City social media accounts. With that, we're going to turn to more reaction coming in following the loss of Charlie Kirk, and lots of folks are mourning. We see, particularly in the conservative realm, as they have been sharing with us that he is really someone who spoke to them and really championed their ideals and stood for free speech, is some of the commentary we're hearing from folks speaking with us tonight. Joining us right now, we have Adele Bazarek, who is known by a lot of folks on Instagram as Truth Bomb Mom. And Adele, we understand you're also a Maha, if you will, influencer, and someone who has looked up to Charlie Kirk and is, of course, reacting to some of the news tonight. So what are your thoughts tonight? What's going through your mind right now as you're trying to process the news of what happened?
Well, it's been a crazy few hours, and everybody, including me, we're all shocked. This has absolutely been devastating. I kind of have this like sick feeling in my stomach. It doesn't even feel real that this has happened. It all happened just so fast, and I am trying to make sense of it myself, and so many others are as well. Like, why did this happen? Charlie's a wonderful guy. He's kind to everyone he meets. He always wants to have a civil discourse. He never wants to like insult anyone or put anyone down. And so it's just kind of trying to wrap our head around, why would this happen? Who could do such a thing, you know?
And I've been asking folks throughout the evening, you know, if they could explain what is it about Mr. Kirk that spoke to them, his ideals as they see it, you know, why Charlie Kirk? Why is this someone who is kind of a beacon of light in your life?
Yeah, sure. Charlie is so brilliant, and he has such strong morals and principles. And for me, I, started on this platform. I'm a shy stay-at-home mom, and he is just so bold and unapologetic, and that just inspired me to be the same way about the freedoms that I saw being threatened, especially around COVID and moving forward. And he has just made me feel strong and bold, and I feel like so many other people feel the same way.
And I mean, as far as the discussions that are happening tonight regarding political violence, and we are seeing folks on both sides of the aisle tonight denouncing this shooting and calling for an end to political violence. How do you see it as a mother? You're raising kids coming up in this country. You're watching this, they might be either watching this or will know about this in some way. How are you feeling about how we are as a nation?
I'm concerned for sure. I have 4 children, and we are doing everything we can to raise them with good ideologies and morals and principles. But yes, I am very concerned about the political climate of our country, and I think it's time for people to take a step back and use reasoning and logic instead of using emotion to dictate what they're going to do next. And just like some people are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, and that really makes me sad because he's a human, and we all need to recognize that we're humans, and we're all we all have humanity, and so people just need to remember that.
And I mean, I feel like would have probably some knowledge of what it means to be a vocal, person. Maybe politically or how you feel about certain things, as you are, as we mentioned, on Instagram. You have 425,000 followers. You speak your mind clearly about how you feel about things. I'm sure you get commentary from folks. Do you ever feel like you experience or have experienced or could experience political backlash, or are there any concerns that folks, have reached out to you in a negative and kind of scary way?
Oh, absolutely. I've been threatened with lawsuits. We've had my husband and I own a local business. We've had people leave our local business. I've been called every name under the sun, but I believe in what I'm talking about, and I believe it's important to speak about. And for me, none of that really matters because the truth is more important.
So how are you going forward here tonight? Given what's happened, obviously you're trying to process it as well. What are you planning for, I guess, in the coming days? How will this move you? How will this impact you? And how do you plan to continue on?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not going to slow me down in any way. I feel like I do need a day or two just to process and just enjoy my children and my family and spend time with them because it is something that some people don't get to enjoy. And Charlie was taken from this world too soon. But it's definitely emboldened me even more. And I feel like there are a lot of people saying, you just created 1,000 more Charlie Kirks.
Adele, anything you'd like to leave our viewers with here on Live Impact News before we wrap things up, either about the situation at hand or just your general thoughts about what's going on right now?
Yeah. I just, our country is so divided with, different ideologies, and everybody finds a way to be divided over different, things they believe. And at the end of the day, we just need to remember that we're all humans and we all have struggles and things that we're dealing with. And we all just need to have more compassion and kindness toward one another.
Adele Bazarek, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights with us here on Live Impact News. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks here who are watching, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Much more coverage to come here of the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. We'll be back once again in just a couple of minutes. All right, folks, thanks so much for sticking with us here for Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. Of course, throughout the evening, we've been covering the reaction, what we know about the investigation into the deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk. As we mentioned, we had an earlier briefing today where officials, including the Utah Governor Spencer Cox, laid out what they knew and what they could really reveal to the public at the time. Essentially, the governor calling this a political assassination. Keep in mind as we listen to it, the person of interest in custody has since been released. That information coming once again just moments ago from a social media post from FBI Director Kash Patel. But with that, let's send you to the very latest of what we know regarding the shooting of Charlie Kirk.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bo Mason, Commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety. Today at approximately 12:20 Mountain Standard Time, political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot in an event at the Utah Valley University. He was taken by private vehicle to Timpanogos Hospital, where he later passed. The Utah Department of Public Safety will be co-leading this criminal investigation to find this killer, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are working in unison with the County Sheriff's Office, the local police department, and the University Police Department, all of which have been very cooperative and fully engaged in this process. Shooting, we did have a suspect in custody, George Zinn, but he was released from custody. He identified that he did not match the shooting suspect and was not an accurate person of interest. However, he has been booked into the county jail by Utah Valley University Police Department for obstruction of justice. We do still have an active investigation for the person of interest. This incident occurred with a large crowd around. There was one shot fired and one victim. While the suspect is at large, we believe this was a targeted attack towards one individual. This is a tragic moment in our state and in our country. As we heal, we encourage everyone who is struggling with news of the incident to call 988, our state mental health crisis line. In addition to that, our partners with the FBI will also be discussing other ways we can communicate through the public for tips and other information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. Our thoughts are also with the people who witnessed this traumatic event. We know that what you experienced was very difficult. Our thoughts are with you as well. As soon as we heard about the shooting, special agents and personnel from the Salt Lake field office responded immediately. We have full resources devoted to this investigation, including tactical, operational, investigative, and intelligence. To be clear, the FBI will fully support and co-lead this investigation alongside with our partners. We are working on setting up a digital media tip line, and as soon as it's established, we'll get that information out to everyone. I know there's a lot of questions. This is very much an active case, and this investigation is in its early stages. We are following all the leads and all the evidence. If anyone has any information, please report it to the FBI or local law enforcement. Thank you.
On behalf of President Tumenez, who we've been communicating with, and she's on her way back right now, I say that on behalf of Utah Valley University, we are shocked and saddened by the tragic passing of Charlie Kirk. We express our sincere condolences to the Kirk family. We grieve with our students, faculty, and staff who bore witness to this unspeakable tragedy. He was invited by the student group Turning Point USA to speak on our campus. We firmly believe that UVU is a place to share ideas and to debate openly and respectfully. Any attempt to infringe on those rights has no place here. We do not condone any form of violence at UVU and seek to make our campus a safe place for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this dark and tragic occasion. I want to thank our law enforcement officers who are leading this investigation, starting with Chief Long and his response here with the UVU Police Department. We're grateful for your leadership and your team. And again, to the speakers that you've just heard from who are co-leading this investigation. I also want to recognize Sheriff Mike Smith, who has been an invaluable partner as this investigation moves forward. I've been in touch with President Trump, with FBI Director Kash Patel. We are completely aligned with our state and federal partners as we work through this case. Now, this is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. We are celebrating 250 years of the founding of this great nation. That founding document, the Declaration of Independence, that this great experiment on which we embarked together 250 years ago, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. The first one of those is life. And today, a life was taken. Charlie Kirk was first and foremost a husband and a dad to 2 young children. He was also very much politically involved, and that's why he was here on campus. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. Historically, our university campuses in this nation and here in the state of Utah have been the place where truth and ideas are formulated and debated. And that's what he does. He comes on college campuses and he debates. That is foundational to the formation of our country, to our most basic constitutional rights. And when someone takes the life of a person because of their ideas or their ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened. Now, we have a person of interest in custody. The investigation is ongoing. But I want to make it crystal clear right now, to whoever did this, we will find you. We will try you. And we will hold you accountable to the furthest extent of the law. And I just want to remind people that we still have the death penalty here in the state of Utah. Our nation is broken. We've had political assassinations recently in Minnesota. We had an attempted assassination on the governor of Pennsylvania. And we had an attempted assassination on a presidential candidate and former president of the United States, and now current president of the United States. Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken. We mourn with his wife, his children, his family, his friends. We mourn as a nation. If anyone in the sound of my voice celebrated even a little bit at the news of this shooting, I would beg you to look in the mirror and to see if you can find a better angel in there somewhere. I don't care what his politics are. I care that he was an American. We desperately need our country. We desperately need leaders in our country. But more than the leaders, we just need every single person in this country to think about where we are and where we want to be. To ask ourselves, is this it? Is this what 250 years has wrought on us? I pray that that's not the case. I pray that those who hated what Charlie Kirk stood for will put down their social media and their pens and pray for his family, and that all of us will try to find a way to stop hating our fellow Americans. With that, we're happy to take a few questions.
The FBI director is posting that a suspect is in custody. I would just like clarification. Do you or do you not have a suspected shooter in custody?
We have a person of interest in custody that is being interviewed right now. We do.
That is not George Zinn.
That is not George Zinn. That is correct.
Are you still searching or looking for another shooter or anybody else related to this?
Yes, we are actively looking for anyone and everyone who has any possible information relating to this shooting.
Can you tell us details about the suspect being taken into custody? Where? How long ago?
We cannot at this point, but we will get you that information when we can.
Is there believed to be a second individual involved in the shooting?
At this point, there is no information that would lead us to believe that there is a second person involved.
Can you guys talk about the possible shooting?
Do you want to talk about what we know there? Yeah.
The only information we have on the suspect, the possible shooter, is taken from closed-circuit TV here on campus. We do have that. We're analyzing it, but it is security camera footage, so you can kind of guess what the quality of that is. But we do know dressed in all dark clothing, but we don't have much better description other than that.
Where do you think the shot came from?
The shot came from here on campus, from a location at a fair, potentially from a roof, yes. A longer distance shot from a roof.
So to clarify, with the security camera footage you have and the person of interest that's in custody, does that match up?
That's what we're trying to decipher right now.
So did FBI or DHS have anything on the threat board this morning?
I can't speak to that.
I'll just say that the investigation's ongoing, and as soon as we have further information, we will be sure to release it.
Any indications of foreign intelligence involvement?
As of now, I can't comment on any of that.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the security of the event itself? Who was there security-wise and what happens on these kind of events?
Chief Long.
So my name is Jeff Long. I'm the police chief here at UVU, and I'll tell you right now, we're devastated. We're a small police department. We have a very large campus. We have over 40,000 students, and we love our students. We love our visitors, and we're devastated by what happened today. This is the police chief's nightmare. I'm very saddened for the Kirk family. I know his wife and parents found out about this. Obviously he's away from home. He's here in Utah. They find out by a police officer that visits their home. That's tragic. Nobody wants that. But I can tell you about our venue today. This was an open venue. This was outside. We did have 6 officers working that event. We had probably over 3,000 people that were in attendance. It sat down in kind of a bowl area here on the central campus. We have a waterfall area, and so he was kind of in a lower area, surrounded by buildings. We had some plainclothes police officers that were in the crowd as well. We train for these things, and you think you have things covered, and these things, unfortunately, they happen. You try to get your bases covered, and unfortunately today we didn't. And because of that, we had this tragic incident. So we did have officers there. We had Charlie Kirk's team. He has a security team that travels with him, and they were here with him when he was shot.
Was the gun recovered?
I'm sorry. Say.
Was the weapon recovered?
At this point, I can't disclose that.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, there was a question being asked about mass shooting. Was that person apprehended? And do you know who asked that question?
Say the question again. I don't know if I understand what you're saying.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, he was answering a question about mass shootings specifically. Was that person apprehended? And do you know who asked that question?
I do not. We do not have that at this moment.
What kind of weapon was used?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for just one more question, so thank you.
Yeah, a question for the chief as well. Was it your team or Kirk's team or a combination of both that kind of set the security protocol for the event?
So we work together. He has his team, and they do this all over the country. We all know that. This is not uncommon for them. They're very comfortable on campuses, and I was coordinating with his lead security guy, and so yeah, we were working together.
Was this a sharpshooter type shot? Was this
Ladies and gentlemen, those are all the questions that will be answered today. Again, thank you for covering this. We will be updating you as soon as we have additional information through normal channels, working with law enforcement. Again, our deepest condolences to the Kirk family and to the students who were there today. I would just ask everyone everywhere to please pray for their family and to pray for our country. We need it now more than ever. Thank you.
Once again, folks, that was the very latest briefing from officials there in Utah on the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Keep in mind, as we mentioned before, within the last 40 minutes, FBI Director Kash Patel has shared that that person of interest that they were speaking of in that briefing has since been released from custody following an investigation and interrogation by authorities. So the investigation does continue tonight. We want to turn now to even more reaction. Within the last couple of hours, we see California Governor Gavin Newsom with a pretty lengthy post on the social media platform X. You see, of course, half staff there over at the White House, but that was ordered by President Trump just this evening. And now we can see with that live image, the flags have now been lowered. But speaking on Mr. Newsom's comments tonight, we talked about how we have reaction from political leaders on both sides of the aisle. Governor Newsom was among the first we saw political leaders to tweet or put out posts condemning the political violence that we saw today. And he followed up just a couple of hours later with this post. And he goes on to say, we should all feel a deep sense of grief and outrage at the terrible violence that took place in Utah today. Charlie Kirk's murder is sick and reprehensible, he says, and our thoughts are with his family, children, and loved ones. He goes on to say, I knew Charlie and I admired his passion and commitment to debate. His senseless murder is a reminder of how important it is for all of us across the political spectrum to foster genuine discourse on issues that deeply affect us all without resorting to political violence. He goes on to say the best way to honor Charlie's memory is to continue his work, engage with each other across ideology through spirited discourse. In a democracy, ideas are tested through words and good faith debate, never through violence. Honest disagreement, he says, makes us stronger. Violence only drives us further apart and corrodes the values at the heart of this nation. Once again, folks, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back on the other side just 2 minutes away with more coverage from Utah. Everyone, thanks so much for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We're continuing our coverage here of the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. As we've mentioned before earlier on this stream, referred to by Utah's governor as a political assassination. Continuing to see reaction pouring in tonight. Right now we're going to hear from Scott Jennings, who is a conservative political strategist as well as a commentator. Let's listen in right now.
Was just so large and powerful. He was able to convince people to get involved in politics that might not have otherwise done so. And you look at what he did on these campuses and these public events, thousands of people were showing up, not for a rock concert, not for a sporting event, but for American politics. He inspired all these kids to be involved in their country. It's unequivocally a good legacy. He was also a godly person. He spoke about his faith openly. He was unapologetic about his views. I think what's been said about Charlie having his hand on the finger on the pulse of the MAGA base is true. But what's also true is that he was enormously influential in that when an issue was emerging, when something was happening and people were sorting out their own views on it. How should I feel about this? Charlie was one of the first people they turned to see where's Charlie going to be on this issue, and how's he processing it, how's he analyzing it, and how does he think the young conservative should view whatever the issue happened to be. So it wasn't that he was just reflecting people, he was leading people, he was influencing people. When he did something, when he said something, when he took a stand on an issue, you can bet that people would move. And so what he did to organize these young kids, to bring conservative values and views into public spaces that aren't normally thought of as places where conservatives would gather, was enormously courageous. It took a lot of damn guts to do it. And we'll never forget Charlie for being that next generation of conservative leader, rallying people when you might not have thought it was cool to do so, but he did it anyway. And he made it cool. And he made it, honestly, Charlie Kirk was a destination for a lot of young conservatives, and we're going to miss it.
Scott, I mean, one thing, it's worth just noting how young he was. I mean, he started this organization back in 2012. He was 18 years old.
Yeah.
He's 31 today. I mean, even, I think the Trump people at the beginning sort of raised an eyebrow. They thought, this kid, like, what does he know? Yeah. And he showed them all that he actually had what you are talking about. He had something.
He did. He had a charisma, and he had an ability to make politics engaging for that audience. He took something that some young people might find to be boring or out of reach, and he made it relevant and interesting for them. And once he had them, and once they were involved, he had then this ability to motivate them to do something with that. If you've ever been to one of these Turning Point USA rallies, I went to the one in Tampa just a few weeks ago, and I was honored he invited me to speak there. It was the first time I had done so. And it's just arena full of young people. Some are in college, some are in high school, and some are just young adults. And their enthusiasm and zeal for the future of our country and how you change it for the better, and how they arrived at that was so inspiring. The way they arrived at it was because they were inspired by someone who knew how to use his voice, knew how to engage in debate and political rhetoric. What he was doing was the opposite of what's happened to Charlie. What's happened to him is violent, but he was using his words and his speech, which is our first protected freedom in this country. And so we're going to miss Charlie, and we pray for his wife and those babies. He leaves behind a young family. You know, people like this who exist in the public sphere, we know them as public actors, and we see them in front of crowds, and we see them on TV, and we hear them on the radio. But they go home at night too, and they open a front door, and they hug a wife, and they hug children, and they put them down, and they oversee the toothbrushing and everything, just like the rest of us. And so there's that side of them that we don't often think about, but Charlie was doing that too. So I just think in moments like this, it's easy to analyze the politics, but you know, there was Charlie the husband and Charlie the father, and he'll be missed forever.
Since we've just learned of this, I think it's absolutely.
Once again, commentary there from Scott Jennings, who is a conservative political strategist and commentator, reflecting on the impact of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Turning now to some live images coming to us directly from Utah. As you see, folks are expressing themselves in the wake of this news. Vigil of sorts that we're seeing. We're told this is not an official vigil for Turning Point USA, but this is just a gathering of folks there waving American flags, showing signs, as we can see right there along the roadway, as they try to express their feelings and kind of grapple with this loss. So those are some of the reactions that we're seeing from the Utah area. Looks like the shot has changed just a bit. From what I can tell, this is our other affiliate out in Utah. So we're just trying to get an idea of exactly what we're looking at. Keep in mind, here on Live Impact News, we're kind of taking these feeds in fast and furious as they're coming in, and it looks like our source just got switched up there. So okay, our producer Jeb here is confirming that this is the official vigil now that this shot has been switched to there in Utah, a vigil that will honor the life and impact of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Wanted to do a quick recap to see how things stand here with that investigation, what we know, the very latest, because things have kind of evolved over the evening. But what we know as it stands tonight here, authorities, including the FBI, have been involved in trying to gather more information. There's a digital tip line that's been put out there on social media. You can find it on the FBI Salt Lake City social media accounts. There's a link that you can click and basically submit information, videos, photos, as we now know that whatever person of interest they had in custody earlier tonight has since been released. That's according to a social media post from FBI Director Kash Patel. So this investigation is still very active, and no doubt authorities are going to want as much information as possible. As we heard from that earlier briefing, though, that came around 6:30 Eastern Time, officials were talking about how essentially they had surveillance video, closed circuit TV is what they called it, but those school images, camera images showing the suspected shooter, they didn't have a great description to share other than it was a person all dressed in black. We know that Mr. Kirk was there at Utah Valley University today to be part of this presentation. He was speaking. We know he was about 20 minutes into speaking when witnesses reported gunshots from a nearby building. Our latest understanding is that person might have been at a building roughly 500 feet away from where Mr. Kirk was speaking, possibly on top of the roof, according to authorities in their latest briefing. They wouldn't comment on the nature of the weapon, only that the shot was apparently fired from a long distance away. They did not comment when asked by reporters whether they found a weapon when they took this person of interest into custody at the time. And we also know that some of the investigation surrounding the actual suspect, person of interest, if you will, has kind of been going back and forth in the sense that when we were following this around 3 o'clock Eastern Time here on Live Impact News, we had heard initially from the school that they had someone in custody. A couple hours later, we heard the school walk that back, saying, we actually don't have someone in custody. And then, as we mentioned, the latest briefing from officials around 6:30, they said that there was that person of interest. And at last check, that person of interest is now let go after an interrogation. Now, we should mention that there have been some videos circulating showing an elderly man wearing either a blue shirt, blue sweater of sorts, who was being detained and arrested. That is a separate person. We're told that person is not being looked at in connection to the shooting, but apparently that person has been booked for obstruction of justice. That man's name, according to authorities, is George Zinn. And essentially in the hours since, we've had an outpouring of reaction from both sides of the aisle. We mentioned this before many times during the stream tonight. Utah Governor Spencer Cox has described this incident as a political assassination. Of course, the authorities not knowing who the shooter is at this point that we know of, or really know their motivations, but just knowing the type of figure and the platform that Charlie Kirk had. Really drawing the conclusion that he was likely targeted, they say, because of his influence and his voice in the political sphere. Both sides of the aisle reflecting now on the state of the country, the state of political violence in the country, knowing that this is just the very latest in many political violence situations that we've seen, not just this year, but in recent years. This happened today, but we talked about this early in the stream, how back in June in Minnesota, there was a state representative who was gunned down alongside her husband. There was an attempted assassination of another lawmaker there in Minnesota. We know then candidate Trump, Donald Trump, escaped an assassination attempt during a rally in Pennsylvania. We hear a lot of lawmakers tonight talking about their concerns with just the climate in the country right now. We actually heard from South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace today talking about how she's calling for more security. She's supposed to have a meeting, she says, with the sergeant at arms to speak about what they can do to heighten security for lawmakers in the Capitol, because she said today she, quite frankly, had to send her staff home because they were just fearful. They felt like their lives were at risk. And so this is something that she said needed to be addressed. And that's some of the dialogue we're seeing, too, with folks who are on the other side politically, if you will, Democrats who've spoken out. We saw former President Joe Biden tweeting today, talking about how this political violence should be condemned. We just shared that commentary from California Governor Gavin Newsom, talking about how, folks should really nowadays try to foster genuine discourse, in his words, without having to resort to political violence. And he actually spoke, as we shared just a few moments ago, about honoring Charlie Kirk's memory by continuing to engage with each other as a country to be able to have these hard discussions, across political lines, spirited discourse, and be able to do it without having to escalate to violence. So I think that's probably, just based on the reactions that we've been hearing throughout the evening, some of the thoughts that many Americans are probably grappling with tonight. Maybe how did we get here? And where we can go forward as a country to make sure that we can all be neighbors with each other, regardless of what we feel or think. And so I think that's some of the questions that we're seeing tonight. So, folks, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Impact News. I know it's been a pretty long night, a pretty robust discussion, though, that we've had throughout the evening with various folks, both here in the Carolinas, where we're broadcasting from, and beyond. So we really appreciate you joining us here. Of course, more coverage to come here on our WCNC Plus platform for folks who are streaming us directly here on WCNC Plus. We also understand a lot of our sister stations across the country might have picked up on this coverage as well. So we thank you all for joining us too. And we definitely plan to bring you more throughout the evening. For folks who are watching on WCNC Plus, though, we're about to turn you over to our next hour of programming. And keep in mind, coming up at the news at 11, we'll have more updates, not only on this story, but also many of the local headlines, too, that are impacting the Carolinas. Thanks so much for joining us here. I'm Vanessa Rufus.